Good afternoon. You're listening to a different special version of K4CO Radio. We have a wonderful organization in our studio today. It is called Third Way Center. And what they do is kind of truth and hope to adolescents and their families by helping them towards trauma resolution. But I'm going to definitely let them kind of tell you exactly what they do. We are here with Renee Johnson, who is the executive director. How are you, Renee?
I'm great, thanks. Good to be here.
Oh, well, thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate it. We're also here with Dana Freisinger. How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Excellent. Let's get right into it. So tell us a little bit about Third Way Center and what it is that you guys provide.
Well, we've been around for about a little over 50 years and providing treatment to adolescents between the ages of 13 and 20. So kids with mental health issues, primarily. We've kind of grown into kind of a continuum of care between beginning with our Lowry program, which is more of a staff secure, intensive program that really works on diagnostics and assessment. The idea is that if we get the diagnosis correct, then we can have a appropriate treatment plan, and then they can kind of move into some of our other programs. We have a couple of community-based programs. One's co-ed, and one is all male, and they're really in the communities because we really want to teach kids how to be good neighbors. And our focus is really around deinstitutionalizing kids. So it's more about, instead of just kind of treating their diagnosis, it's really about how they can be productive members of society. The program for the older kids is our Lincoln facility, which is serving kids that are older, 16 and a half and above, but it's an apartment program and it's still very treatment focused. But really is the focus in what we found is if they're doing treatment, that's generally what works, no matter what the setting. So really try to match whatever treatment they need to the individual kid. So we probably have a lot more chaos because, they come to us for certain reasons. So it's not like they behave as soon as they get there. But the behavior is just really a message of kind of giving us clues as to kind of how they're dealing with how they feel and what's happened to them.
Now, you said something interesting about getting them more community members. Now, can you expand on that? What do you mean by that when it comes to kids and getting out in the community?
Well, I think both starts, we try to meet the kid where they're at. So a lot of times they come with a lot of behavioral problems, right? Mm-hmm. And generally, once we can kind of get to those issues, sometimes, they get a little better, right? I mean, that's kind of the general gist. There is no locks. They really have to kind of choose kind of to be there. So the idea is that they're choosing, right? Because they could run away anytime, right? They could leave. So if we're kind of getting to stuff, then they stay, right? And they get, that's why we talk about the truth and the hope, right? The truth is, this is what's wrong. And the hope is I can do something about it. So being in the community is that it's really kind of, we kind of look at treatment as a very private thing also. So we don't have any big signs on our buildings. They're regular homes that they fit right in the community. And the idea is that, we all need to take care of each other, right? So sometimes we have to do a lot of neighbor kind of control at times, like just talking with them about, please let us know if there's any problems, and all those kind of things. But the idea is that they're in the community, they're choosing to kind of be there, and they can work through work through whatever trauma they need to work through, right? So we do groups, we do individuals, we do family work. The family is really a big part of our treatment. We all need to belong to somebody, and sometimes it's not even about, reunification and those kind of things. Sometimes it's just about the truth. Mm-hmm. This is who my family is, like it or not. We don't choose our family, right?
You got to accept it. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So the acceptance part of it is part of their treatment, right? And then they can choose. You can do a lot of things with that, right? Sometimes we're just gathering, supports out there, or sometimes it's just about, okay, it wasn't about me. It was really about them, right? That's the truth sometimes, right? With families that can't kind of handle their kids, or, kids that really have a lot of problems. A lot of times we'll find that it's been generations of problems, right?
Yep. Gotcha. And Dana, so as assistant clinical director, can you kind of spread some light on what type of behavioral issues you guys work with?
I really focus on our Lowry program, which is when they first get there, it's doing the assessment and diagnostic piece. So we get a wide variety of behaviors, property destruction, self-harming, suicidal ideation, homicidal ideation, running away, trafficking, aggression, everything that probably would which scares the criminal system, which scares the society. And we have a real big belief system that nobody screws up their life on purpose. And so, as much as we would like to believe that it's a choice to act badly, it's not. And so we really try to meet the kids where they're at and figure out where the behaviors are coming from. And if you feel badly, you're going to behave badly. So we really try to figure out why they feel badly.
And what you said right there is really, really truthful right there, because it's amazing. I was reading a study where even forcing yourself to smile for 5 minutes will put you in a better mood. So what you feel is how you're going to behave. Exactly. Mm-hmm. What types of treatments really are there? I mean, do you guys work with third-party people? Is all in-house? And what type of treatments actually occur?
Our treatment's all in-house. We have a 4-to-1 ratio of licensed therapists per kid. But in addition to that, we have a substance use provider in-house. We have 2 full-time psychiatry. We have treatment leaders that are both licensed, or that are licensed licensed therapists. We have senior staff members, which are all licensed therapists. So we have a huge in-house support representation system of therapists. And our therapists work the milieu. So they are on the floor with the kids, cooking, cleaning, doing groups, playing video games. We call it drive-by therapy, kind of, where the therapeutic process is always happening. Mm-hmm. So you can be making dinner with one of the residents and talking about what issues that brings up to make dinner. Did you always have dinner? Was there food on the table when you were growing up? Were you able to eat with your family? Was your family there when you ate? Was there a lot of arguing? Was there domestic violence during dinner? We talk about it while we're doing laundry. Did you have a washer and dryer? Did you have clean clothes? Did you have clothes? Mm-hmm. Cleaning a room. Did you have your own room? Did you have a bed to sleep in? So the therapy is always happening, and it's always discussing, is there trauma affiliated with everything that you're doing? And it's constantly going on. So these teenagers that we see, or these kids at 13 years old, they've been through treatment. A lot of them started treatment at the age of 3 or 4. They've been involved in the system a lot of the time, or they've seen a lot of things. So sitting in a room for an hour once a day or once a week, they know what to say. They probably are better therapists than the ones that have been trained to be therapists. And it doesn't work.
Right.
And the way we do therapy is we make it an ongoing process We have an on-site school at Lowry, and in the other we have a off-site school for all the other kids, where there's also 2 licensed school social workers that are there to help that process. All of our teachers are special ed teachers. So our therapy is constant, and there's a lot of supports that are done in their everyday activities.
And of course, effective therapy is an ongoing process. It's not something that you can just, I'm, good after 2 weeks and time to live out my life. And Renee, I wanted to touch on something. So you were saying that this is really for adolescents that are targeted. However, you do a lot with families as well. Can you kind of get into that? So are the families really involved in this therapy with the kids?
Absolutely. Oh, go ahead.
Well, the kids do a lot better if the family is involved. So a lot of the work, and sometimes there's been so much trauma either that's happened between the family members that a lot of things have to get resolved. And then we get a lot of kids that have failed adoptions also. They've been adopted. They probably had trauma really early on and were adopted a little bit, maybe even at 3 or 4 and sometimes older. And then are pretty impossible to parent for the most part. And then they have a lot more rejection over rejection is what happens. They get layers of trauma. So sometimes some of that process is figuring out where it all started, right? So we kind of talked a little bit even earlier about finding families, right? So we do a lot of, so it's not necessarily the traditional kind of family work a lot of times, but a lot of times it's figuring it out. And sometimes family is not your blood relatives either, right? So it's even friends or the clergy or whoever. So it's our job to really gather people, because that's what makes kids more, and everybody really, more successful when they get out into the community, right, is to have lots of supports around them. So a lot of times it's kind of built around those things. So, and a lot of times they have a lot of families have divorced, they've remarried, so it's really kind of gathering all that information.
And you are definitely right where family is not necessarily blood.
Yeah.
Especially when you get older, you find your support systems. A lot of times it's not.
Yeah.
So.
But I think sometimes it gets in the way, though, if you don't have some resolution around it. You kind of keep repeating the same situation over and over. So it's really important, and they have this opportunity at least while they're younger, right, or in placement, and we're sort of forcing it, but to really kind of figure out the truth about where they came from, what happened, why they're not with their family anymore. And then they can kind of, most of us, once we can, sometimes you have to grieve that first part, right, in order to be open and accepting to the next part. So sometimes that's the process. And sometimes they have a lot of family that truly, given the chance, they've also kind of had a bad experience in the system. So they're pretty like, we're going to be yelled at, or, it's going to be our responsibility. So there's a lot of getting through all of that to get to a place where you can just kind of talk about what happened.
Just breaking down those walls and those
right.
barriers. So,
And we talk a lot about our program kind of deals with behavior is a message, right? It's about how you feel. And then the trauma really is about the stuff that happened. And that's a very personal, kind of specific, usually thing to that kid. And they don't know generally what's happened has made them feel certain ways. And a lot of times it depends on culturally. You got to take cultural issues into consideration, how the whole family feels about therapy or talking about things, all of those things that come into play. But the idea is that if you can figure out specifically, why do I, and if the behavior keeps happening, it serves a purpose, right? There's something that's in it that keeps, it's purposeful, and
right.
There's a reason for it. So you're not getting to it if the behavior keeps happening, right? So once you can kind of, and that's what we get into all the time, right? Is the kids come to us and they've been in a lot of placements, or they haven't been, right? They've been on the run, or they've been with family waiting for placement, or they've been in hospitals, or they've been in so many different things where they've started and stopped. And then you're just, what you're dealing with then is a lot of resistance, because what's the difference, right? It doesn't help. All I do is, and if all they do is talk about it, it serves a purpose in terms of, oh yeah, that's what's wrong, right? Or that's how I feel. But it doesn't solve it at that point. So it's really about what you do about it.
You got to figure out why you're doing it and what the consequences are exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Once it's gotten enough, right? Once it's become enough, like, oh, I don't want this anymore. So that's what we talk about. Do you still want to keep, punching the wall every time, or do you want to keep doing this? You want your probation officer to keep coming over and saying you're going to go to jail, and if the kid really feels like you get them, it makes a difference, right? Because everybody needs to feel like they're seen and they're heard. So that part of it, and then and the family is about sort of bringing truth, right? To they didn't just do this. There's a reason. There's an explanation, and everybody's part of it.
There's some type of benefit
for
that
everybody.
they see why they keep doing it because it serves a purpose. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. We are speaking with Dana Freisinger and Renee Johnson, and they are with the Third Way Center. We will be right back on K4C. We are back on K4CO Radio with Dana Freisinger and Renee Johnson of Third Way Center. And wanted to get into, you were talking about you have all in-house counseling and therapists, and wanted to talk about, do you have psychologists? Do you have psychiatrists? What type of clinicians, basically, that you do have? And I guess, Dana, you can get us started with that aspect of it.
We have all of the above. And we also have licensed therapists and social workers. The reason being is it takes a village to help these kids. Medication is a huge part of what we do at Third Way Center. We have lots of kids with lots of different diagnostic needs. One of the big things that we spend a lot of time doing is figuring out the correct diagnosis. And once we do that piece, we have to make sure they're medicated correctly. And so we have 2 psychiatrists on staff that really spend a lot of time weekly. We review medications, make sure they're medicated correctly, the meds are working, that they fit the diagnosis, and that the kids will not only stay on the medications that they need to be on, but that they're doable when they leave, and that they're on a medication that they will need to be on, or if they really need to stay on the medication when they do leave. When you're doing really tough trauma work and you're going through that process, sometimes you need more meds than you would when you're done with your trauma work and you've kind of you've had some sort of justice for all the trauma you've been through, and you won't need as many meds. Or if you have a chronic diagnosis such as schizophrenia or something of that nature, you will need to be on a medication that will help you be successful in the community.
And your whole life, if it's something like that. Exactly.
Correct. So the kids are very educated around what medication they're on. It's a process with the family. It's a process with the team. It's something everybody would agree upon. And that's why the psychiatrists are very involved in the treatment process.
Do you find that there are kids out there that can be helped strictly with psychologists and not medication? Or do you find...
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes you need it in the beginning to kind of help stabilize and help you kind of get through those times, and you won't need it ever again.
Exactly. Yeah. When the medical field mixed with psychology, that was the whole idea, is to take these temporarily, then slowly get rid of them once your mind is...
And our doctors are very much a part of the treatment process and meet the children, meet the families, work with all of us as a whole team.
That is excellent. So, of course, you are a nonprofit. So, money goes a long way. Now, I did want to ask Renee, kind of, either both of you, where the money does go, how the money does help specifically. I mean, I'm sure it's for paying the counsel and the therapist and everything like that, brick and mortar. But what else? What really does this money really provide?
So probably is the money's probably spent on those things that, like we are funded through Medicaid. I mean, for the most part, is how we get our funding to pay the staff and the overhead. So the money that we get that's donated generally goes to things like testing, things that is not covered by, like,
Medicaid.
And those kind of things. And also, like, we do a lot of kind of thinking outside the box with the kids. So getting them somewhere, like, to find family. That's a really good example of sending a staff and a kid to meet their family for the first time.
And some of these families aren't even just in Colorado, correct? Right.
Yeah, it could be anywhere. We have a kid right now that has a family member in Texas who they have not met. And we're sort of looking at, they've been doing some virtual meetings, right? Getting to know this, person, but now going and with therapeutic, kind of with some, with their therapist makes a big difference sometimes in figuring out what they need to do. So those kind of things cost a lot of money. Anything kind of extracurricular, things like kids that might be interested in, we do even some music therapy, right? So instruments,
love it.
Right?
I love that.
Or, even having money to pay for some kind of like art therapy, right? Of somebody to come in and do a project with the kids and paying for those extra supplies. The holidays, a lot of times we really do try to connect kids with families if they have any family. But if they don't, they basically do stuff like go out to dinner together and that's an extra kind of a thing as well, right? Things that might get kids prepared to go to work, buy steel-toed boots, right? If they get a job, right? Pay sometimes extra for getting a kid started in an apartment as they're leaving, like getting it, furniture and bedding and all of those things that they generally have, but you need a lot more, right? It's all those things you don't even think about that cost money to go. So whenever we get any kind of donations, it's been really helpful to have that kind of flexibility to support these kids in whatever way they need to be supported.
And you've been around since 1970. So, I mean, do you have people that, after 18, 19, 20 that are still actually involved with you guys?
Well, I've been with Third Way over 20 years. So a lot of the staff really believe in the mission and what we do, and it's constantly changing. So the one thing that Third Way really offers is they change with what the society needs and what the community needs.
Right.
So through COVID, we changed our program to meet the needs of COVID. Through, at one point we had a Teen Moms program because that's really what the community needed at that time. And now we still have Teen Moms, so the Teen Mom program wasn't needed as much, so we changed that program. And Third Way's always changing with the times and what is needed and what the community needs and what the system needs. And it's really been, I think, the staff and the people who've worked for Third Way for a long time and the longevity of the staff that we've had there have really felt like that's what's made us successful and that's what works, because it's not about us and the organization. It's about what the kids need.
Right.
And what is important for them.
And that changes over time, all the time.
All the time.
Now we have social media. It's completely different than in the 50s when kids were going through all of this.
And the kids have changed and their needs have changed. You bring in social media, it brings a whole new set of problems.
Right.
I mean, COVID brought a whole new set of problems. Cell phones brought a whole new set of problems. Vaping is our new big problem. There's just all these things that have to change, and the flexibility of Third Way and the flexibility of how we do things and researching constantly what is needed for these kids. And each individual kid is different.
Right.
And being able to do it that way has made, I think, what Third Way is special, what makes Third Way special.
Gotcha. And every kid is different. I really agree with that. I mean, they have completely different backgrounds, all experience different things. We're going to take another quick break here real quick. We will be right back speaking with Dana Freisinger and Renee Johnson of the Third Way Center. And we are back on K4CO Radio with a couple members of Third Way Center. We have Renee Johnson, the executive director, and Dana Freisinger, who is the assistant clinical director. And thank you guys very much for coming in and letting us know what you guys do and how you help out. A lot of times, the biggest help that you can get and that people can do is letting people know that you're there. And, of course, donations and seeing if anything that they can do, even volunteer-wise or anything like that. So if you could kind of get into how people can really help you guys, and even off the side of that, how listeners would contact you if they're just like, I want to get involved, or I know somebody that needs to speak with these people. So whoever would like to tackle that first. All right. We got Renee.
Well, we do have a website, and it's Third Way Center, all written out, .org. And there is, if you want to donate, there's a little /donate, I guess. Mm-hmm. So, and we are on social media. We're Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So there's always ways to kind of find us out there. I think it's twofold in some ways, because I think on some levels, we talked about a little bit earlier, is it's such a private process for somebody to kind of go through this therapeutic process. It's a lot of work, and it doesn't always look pretty. So
as it shouldn't.
I know. It doesn't always look pretty, and so I think that we sort of protect the kids in that way, and and when we protect them, I think it also kind of doesn't make us as well known in the community sometimes. Our buildings are not, as I said before, they don't have signs on them that kind of say, hey, we're Third Way. We really try to blend into the community. We try to blend in and allow, some anonymity. Did I say that right?
Anonymity. Yep.
For the kids to just be normal, right? Learn how to get on the bus and go to school without freaking out or running away, right? Or those kind of things. So it's both, to allow them to have that time, also probably has kept us from being as well known out in the community as probably we could have been, or even sometimes should be. So anyways, there's lots of ways to find us around in terms of those, but we are all through the community. Each program is somewhere right now in Denver, so they're kind of located throughout the community, and kids are learning how to get out there, work, get on the bus, do those things. Except if you're at Lowry, then you have to stay there until you leave. But Lowry's the smaller kind of diagnostic. It's not smaller, but it's the diagnostic.
More diagnostic center. Gotcha.
So it really is more of a cocoon where the kids have that place where we kind of shut out the rest of the world, and so that they can just focus on themselves and their family work. But once they get to the other programs, the Lincoln program in particular too, because they're really working and learning how to live on their own. They're in apartments and that kind of thing. So I guess ways to find us and where those donations go, we talked a little bit about that earlier, but there is always ways to just kind of, contact us through our website. And we have a whole development team that kind of takes that on. And there's sometimes volunteer projects that can be done. Usually it has to do with, kind of maintenance kind of things, or, they come in and do a garden. There's been people who have spruced up things, painted, got things together when we needed it.
Just volunteer their own time to kind of help out around it. Mm-hmm.
Yep, those kind of things.
And I see on the website you got a phone number. Is that the main phone number?
Yes.
And then that kind of connects that person with all the different facility.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Right. And going through that, then our development team can really kind of help sort of guide anybody that wants to volunteer or do any kind of those kind of things. We do have an associate board, which people can join, which is kind of our, we have a board, but the associate board kind of is out there doing kind of community events and those kind of things. So it's a really nice way to kind of also donate time and energy and those kind of things. And they have a couple events that they do every year. We have a capital campaign that we're sort of working towards, which is creating a program that will be an extension of our Lowry program, a little bit smaller, but still those high acuity kind of kids that need that cocoon kind of a place where we can figure out what's wrong and
more of a expanding your diagnostics.
And then and the medication evaluation and all of those kind of things. So
Gotcha. Well, it sounds wonderful, and that's great that people can just volunteer their time and everything. Now, when it comes to these kids, can people donate their time even just to kind of go out on these events and these excursions with these kids and just kind of be there? As you said earlier, a lot of times being there is huge. And so I didn't know if these kids are mainly connected with the staff and the therapists and, psychologists and psychiatrists, but even volunteers. Is there a bridge right there?
As far as like mentors and those kind of things, is that kind of what you're thinking about?
Yeah.
There is ways to we do it again through our website and through our development program. And what that would look like is generally very individualized and trying to match adults with kids, right? Specifically, usually what that kid might need. And sometimes it's about job coaching, right? Right? These kids don't have a lot of experience with working. So usually that takes a little bit of time and effort.
And especially these days with jobs and, it's so different.
Right. Yep.
It's not like when we were young, you just walk into a place, hey, can I work here?
Yep. Right. And even going to college, it's such a different experience, right? Where when they're kind of looking to do, sort of figure out what they want to be and what they want to do. So, there is opportunity, and it's probably very individualized, but going through our development department is the way to go.
Gotcha.
That kind.
Perfect. And just because we are a radio station here, I would like to ask you, Dana, we kind of touched a little bit about the music aspect of it. I think music is a huge way for kids to, and I'm just speaking of myself personally, to express themselves, to really, it therapeutically benefits these kids. And it's really great that you guys, have outlets and everything where if a kid is interested in music, you can point them in the right direction.
So music is huge because they're teenagers, and so everything they do is expressed through music. Specifically at Arnold Lowry campus, they have ukulele group. So we have a program at Lowry where we work on kids who have an encephalopathy, which is some sort of traumatic brain injury. If it be from birth, if it be from alcohol exposure in vitro, if it just be from their trauma. And one of the big issues with that is there's research that says if you learn how to play an instrument at all, it will help develop the frontal lobe that's been damaged. And so all of our kids over there love to play the ukulele or guitar. And we have all the staff that do it with them. And so it is a daily group that we play the ukulele or guitar. And so they learn how to write songs. They learn how to play songs that they've always wanted to play. So if anybody really loves music and wants to donate guitars or ukuleles, we always can use them. But it's something that they have, it becomes a activity that is a life skill, and that they take with them to their community programs too when they move on. And their Christmas wish lists have been so many different kinds of guitars and ukuleles. But we also spend a lot of time listening to classical music because that's another thing that helps develop the frontal lobe.
Yep.
And has been we have surround sound music in all of our facilities at Lowry that play the classical music to help with that piece.
Oh, that warms my heart. I absolutely love that. Oh, thank you very much. We are not done. We're going to take one more musical break, and we will be right back with Third Way Center. And just to recap, so the website is third spelled out. So thirdwaycenter.org. and they are on Facebook and Instagram as well as LinkedIn. We will be right back on K4CO. All right, we are back with Third Way Center with Dana and Renee. We were talking actually over the break, and you mentioned something about a wait list on this. Can you kind of let our listeners know about that?
Well, as I mentioned before, we have kind of 3 levels of care, right, in our program. And the system has changed quite a bit over the last couple of years, and a lot of places have closed down. So there is a lot of kids out there in need. We serve up to 87 kids at any given time. We're full, and we have a waiting list that's pretty extensive, especially for the Lowry program, because it's more for those higher acuity kids that are really in need. And a lot of it is because there's not a lot of places out there anymore. So it's becoming more of an issue. And I'm sure everybody's seen on the news all the hospitals and overflowing, and no place to put these kids and families that are just in dire need. So, especially
since a lot of it is paid.
Right.
If you really don't have resources, there's nowhere to go.
Right. And the kids are really hard to work with, so you figure that as well, right? So that really training staff and keeping staff is become more of an issue over the years, especially since COVID in a lot of ways, because there's so much, I guess, more opportunity to do jobs that aren't quite as glamorous as working in a residential treatment center with these kids that kind of yell at you all the time, and they're not that easy, right? But I'm telling you, the payoff is fabulous when you can get through that, when you can really get through that anger and that sadness and that scared kind of kid that really kind of figures stuff out and is able to kind of move on, either move home with their family or move out on their own or move through the system. It's tremendous. And it really, they talk a lot about burnout and those kind of things too. And if you have short staff and you have really hard kids, there can be a lot of burnout. But when you see that success, it changes everything, and the burnout kind of goes away. So I think that there's a really huge need, and I think sometimes residential treatment gets a bad rap, in my opinion. And I feel like our program is very much focused on what the kids need, and nobody does this work just for the money, for sure, but it is very rewarding when you can really do the work with a kid. They can get through it. They're not being pulled out. They're not being there's just a lot of pressure these days on everybody, and nobody knows how to really meet all the needs in the system either. So there's more kids than there are beds. And so we are expanding, as I mentioned before, and are going to really kind of build on this other program that'll be an extension of Lowry, as I said before. But I feel like we sort of have a really good handle on what these kids need. It's just the ability to be able to do it and meet as many kids' needs as we can is kind of our dilemma sometimes.
And you had also even mentioned COVID and everything like that, and it's Dana, maybe you can kind of put some light on this, where I don't think it would be as effective when we're in a Zoom culture right here, especially for kids. And even Renee, what you just said, it is so different being a kid these days. I am so glad I'm not. I have 2 nieces, and I'm just like, oh, it's absolutely insane. But especially with the COVID thing and the Zoom society that we're in, doesn't seem like it'd be as effective. So it's great that that's kind of over and you're kind of face to face, correct?
Well, in so many ways it's over, but we still have the Zoom culture looming behind us. Mm-hmm. And I think Renee touched on that a little bit with the job market. there's a lot of therapists and a lot of people who are able to take jobs where it's a little bit more glamorous of working at home and doing telehealth, and not having to come into work. And our therapists work hard hours. They're there. We have a therapist on staff from 8 to 10 Monday through Friday, and they do work weekends because we don't close our doors. We're there 365 days a week, Monday through 7 days, or 365 days a year, 7 days a week, and we don't close.
Yeah, you don't take holidays for mental health.
And overnight, we have issues, and you're on call, and the kids come first, and you really have to believe in that mentality that your hours aren't over at 5 o'clock at night. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the kids will have a crisis at 7 o'clock at night.
Right.
And you have to really believe that you're going to change the world one kid at a time and really want to be that kind of therapist. And they're harder to find, and people really don't want to work that kind of way anymore sometimes. And I think that is why we've lost a lot of good treatment centers throughout Colorado. And there's not many of them left. And the licensing and the restrictions on the paperwork and everything that goes into place into running these programs has really changed throughout the years. Mm-hmm. And it's hard. And so I think that is why we have such a huge wait list. And there's a lot of kids just sitting there waiting to get treatment.
Right.
And it really puts these parents who are really trying to get help for these kids in a big bind of, I hope my kid's going to be okay while they wait.
Right. Well, I'm just so happy that you guys are here and do what you do, and have been doing it since 1970, which is great. I mean, over 50 years is wonderful, especially in the community of Colorado. So really just wanted to thank you guys for being here, and please keep in touch with K4CO as to everything that's going on and any events or anything coming up, and we really appreciate it. So
thank you for having us.
Yes, this has been fun.
Yeah, no problem at all. You've been listening to Third Way Center website, thirdwaycenter.org, all spelled out. And definitely look them up if you can. If you even need to donate some time or some money, or just somebody that could benefit from this. So this has been a K4CO interview, and everybody have a wonderful day.